Hello, friends. Today I want to share a very small collection within my collection, and that is of Addie Joss. I wanted to share a little bit about not just his cards, but also him as a player, as a person, as a significant part of baseball history in ways that maybe folks don't always realize. So I'm going to share a little bit statistically, just to give some perspective on how great he really was in his short career. I'm going to share a few facts based on the back of this card. Interesting player, definitely. If you just do a search on YouTube, you'll find some really neat documentary videos, short 6 to 10 minute kind of things. And then also just, check out Baseball Reference. Take a look at his career, career ERA of like 1.89. He has the lowest whip in history. Only played 9 years. So he is kind of the ultimate exception for being allowed into the Hall of Fame, as he is a Hall of Famer. So just to kind of address, this is from the kind of larger documentary that was done. So some of you may have collected those cards. It's coming in a little blurry. I think it's trying to focus on some of the other cards in the background. But that's the Addie Joss. So baseball tragedy. Over his career, Joss allowed only 8.9 runners per 9 innings, the best mark ever. He threw a perfect game in 1908 and a no-hitter in 1910. But in the spring of 1911, he contracted meningitis and died at the age of 31. His Cleveland teammates, fearing their owner would not give them the day off to attend the funeral in Toledo, skipped town anyway. Rebellion, silent since the failed Players League of 1890, was in the air again. So goes through some of his kind of accomplishments, statistics, bio down below that. Broke in 1902. He was born in 1880, so he was 22 years old. Broke in with a one-hitter. His next start, he took a no-hitter into the 9th. So, and he actually, I believe he still has the record for at least pitches thrown in a perfect game. So, pretty remarkable. 1907, he led the league in wins with 27. 1908 led an ERA with 1.16. Had a 1-0 perfect game, beating Ed Walsh, who fanned 15 that day. And both gave up no earned runs. I believe Walsh's only run allowed was unearned. 1911. So that would have put him at, it's his spring training, so I don't know if he was quite 31 yet. He might have still been 30. Collapsed in spring training, died April 14th. So he died at 31 and 2 days. There's a benefit game staged for his widow, which this is one of the coolest facts and stories given the tragic situation. So a benefit game is staged for his widow, pitting AL stars, which we now would call All-Stars, against Indians. It's the first Major League midseason All-Star exhibition. So it was not officially called an All-Star game, but the other team had Ty Cobb, Joe Wood, Walter Johnson, Tris Speaker. So a lot of really, really big names came out. Sam Crawford, Eddie Collins, I forget. I mean, there was a whole slew. It was really who's who of the day, which, given they were doing that in an era where players were not paid extremely well, and doing that for no compensation, doing it really just as a fundraiser. I believe, I know I had looked up the total in the past, but the funds raised were pretty darn significant. It was a pretty impressive total, given the era and, everything else surrounding the situation. So, just cool. I think that speaks a lot to the person and the impact he would have had on, not just his team, that they were willing to, potentially get in a lot of trouble for leaving town to attend his funeral, but also the other players coming together, you have Walter Johnson and Ty Cobb and a whole slew of other amazing players coming together and giving up their time and putting on an exhibition game to raise money for your family. That means, obviously your impact was pretty significant. The other thing that was interesting, digging into his stats. So I think he had like 160 some odd, 165 maybe career wins. 9 seasons is all he's credited with playing. So the Hall of Fame had to make an exception to allow him in. But within that, even his last season, I think he only like 12 starts, maybe pitched in 13 games. So it was almost like, 8 point something seasons to acquire, all those wins. I think he had 4 seasons with an ERA over 2, and one of those was like 2.01. So just amazing, phenomenal player. So what I have on the screen right now is a Fleer card, which these are really, really neat for those that like to, read the back, get to know a little bit more about, the player, their career. These are really just neat. So Joss was a great pitcher from the start of his career. Talk about him playing at University of Wisconsin, so that's kind of neat. But similar ideas. There's some career stats, 159 wins. I think Baseball Reference might actually say different now, which is interesting. 159 and 96. Maybe I'm just wrong. That's possible too. Strikeouts to walks. Not a big strikeout pitcher, but that's probably par for the era. So I think that's a neat one. Good profile picture there. I snagged that. I think I snagged that when I didn't really realize quite how expensive these darn things can get. So, game-worn used material. At least so they say. Hopefully that's true. But his stuff, those are not very common to see. So I'm pretty happy to have that in the collection. And I've got the couple of T206s back there. Those are both pretty nice examples. The 1.5 is well deserving, but you still get really nice image on that card. It's a really cool looking portrait picture. And then his pitching image is also pretty darn cool. Nice lighting, has a little bit of the nice like yellow sky behind kind of image, and cool depiction of the old glove. I do have a few others, literally just a few. So a couple of caramel cards. Those are pretty darn good. That's actually a nice grade. It's got a 3 on that one. So those are kind of the standard caramel back. So again, that's E90-1. Happy to have that in a little bit nicer grade. And the next one's not as nice of a grade, but I love the card. E93, big old crease, but if you're going to give a crease, that's probably the better place. Obviously, that's lower grade. That's just a 1, but the colors and everything else are still super vibrant. His name's a little messed up, maybe. Yeah, it's a little crazy looking, right? But I love the image, obviously. Nice familiar image, right? It's almost like a slightly different interpretation of the same thing. And then one that was on my gold card list that I made as a big pickup. So these are all, I feel like most of his cards you can get into for a couple $100, $200-300, at least at the time of this recording. Hopefully that only goes up, but you never know. But that's kind of where they sit now. Obviously a 3, sometimes a portrait, or a more rare caramel. He's got some caramel cards that are 4 figures in rough shape. So there's definitely exceptions. The one exception I have is this thing that was on my goal list. This one's a really weird story. This exact card was out there ungraded. I watched it, I bid on it, I lost it in an auction. And I apologize if you're watching this, if you're the one that had that happen. But I lost it in an auction. So the person that won sent it off to PSA to get graded. Obviously, if you look at it, it's got clipped corners, and the other thing that's bad is it's got writing on the back. So there was no potential of this thing being anything other than authentic and probably altered, because the clipping, I'd imagine, is enough to do it, and the handwriting is not exactly ideal. But given all that, it still presents really well. The borders are nice. The corners are, a little dinged, but again, you're talking about 100 and some odd year old card, so I don't mind that. And the clipped corners, pretty minor, not super offensive. I love the T205s because they have a catcher's mask and glove, and team name, the bats around the player. I think that's just such a neat looking card. So this thing generally, if it gets into anything other than brutal condition, gets to be 4 figures. So I lost this thing raw. The person that beat me sent it into PSA, got the grade that we expected, and then listed it for sale. I then won it as a PSA graded card for less than the original ungraded auction. So is it worth grading your cards? Sometimes. Do you always win? No. So I typically don't send in lower dollar cards. This one, even in this shape, I probably would have sent in to be graded too. I don't know if I would have had the expectation of it netting me more money in sale though. But you never know. Back of this card, also a good read. So Addie Joss, whose death in 1911 was a great loss to his team and to the national game. So it's really interesting to have a card. And if you know T205s, generally they show the last 3 years statistics. And this one, obviously they, in place of having statistics, tell his story. So they talk a little bit about his playing days. He was a faithful player, liked by his teammates, respected by the public, many thousands of whom attended his funeral. So just really, really a neat card back. And again, I know my version is, it's kind of both exceptional and brutal at the same time, which is a tough combo. But if the writing and the clipped corners offend you, but you still want it to look like this, you're talking many thousands of dollars. Honestly, it's probably a couple $1,000 card, because these get expensive fast. To be under $1,000, you have to get something that's probably graded like that. So I'm very happy just to have this. The overall image of the card is very cool. Having additional Addie Joss stuff in the collection to me is really, really cool. So if you're not as familiar with him, do your T206 run, grab a card, but do a little deep dive and learn some Addie Joss history. Really, really fascinating career, tragic story, but also some really just neat recognition and impact on the game and his fellow players, both teammates and opponents. So that is my Addie Joss collection. A little bit about the T206 and caramels, T205. I will see y'all again next time for the next video. Take care.